Hello there beautiful, how are you doing today? Welcome back to my channel, my name is Joesephyr and today we'll be talking about Gabranth and Divine Odin over on Dissidia Opera Omnia, and ultimately whether you should be pulling for Gabranth or his new bannermate Layle, or maybe Paine and Rude with their new reworks and C90 Awakenings and all the good stuff that comes along with them. So if you'd like to find out more about these characters and of course the Divine Odin event itself, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Now before we get started, of course, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box down below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Patreon, and now Instagram as well, as I decided that the best course of action for me to try and take my artistry further, for those of you that would like to know about it, is instead of putting it on YouTube, I've decided to start my Instagram all over again. So if you would like to come and follow me on there for makeup, art, like artwork, gaming content, all sorts of other things on there, I would love it if you guys just gave me a quick click and a follow over on Instagram, as I've discovered over the last couple of weeks quite how important Instagram is to being an influencer as going forward. And over on Twitch, of course, you can catch me streaming all sorts of different things, including Dissidia Opera, Final Fantasy 9 will be approaching very soon for the Platinum Trophy, waiting for that Excalibur 2 run, and all sorts of other things as well. Now, due to people's encouragement and a lot of people asking me about these things, I'm actually doing something a little crazy, and I've never done anything like this before, but I'm going to start thinking about raising some money to go to San Diego TwitchCon, because I had such an incredible time in Amsterdam and I would love to meet some of you guys over the US, but obviously getting from the UK to the US is a very, very expensive endeavour. And if this doesn't happen, that's absolutely fine, but I've never tried anything crazy like this before, but I'd love to provide some cool incentives and goals and marks in like where we go from here to try and raise some money to get over to San Diego. And let me know in the comments below if you have any ideas for that kind of thing. I have some ideas over on Twitch for the month of August, so who knows, maybe something crazy will happen, but it's totally fine if it doesn't. And of course, over on Patreon, I do always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video. And today, that person is going to be Lude Pasta, who has Onion Knight as their title card and has been very active in my Discord and has some really interesting teams that they use on Dissidia Opera Omnia. So massive shout out to you and to all of my patrons, as without you guys, I wouldn't be able to continue doing what I'm doing at all. So a massive thank you goes out to you. And of course, don't forget to check out all the other content creators and resources out there for Dissidia as well. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at some of these banners then, shall we? So coming along on Friday, along with Divine Odin, we're going to see two banners here, both of which will contain Gabranth FR, but they will have separate stuff other than that. The first banner we're going to talk about here is going to contain Layle, his full gear, including his BT that's been upgraded to BT+, and then we're going to see Steiner and Rude return as well with their LDs. Now, Steiner doesn't get anything but his force enhancements here, but he's actually kind of useful, at least in Divine Odin, if you're looking for somebody to reduce attack and the amount of damage that you take. But let's take a look at Rude and Layle to begin with. So, of course, a massive shout out goes out to Mediu for their translations over on Reddit, as always. Rude basically just gets a lot of HP damage ups, like the number of HP dumps in his attacks going off more regularly, which is nice to see. So you get 3 from Crush Hammer, 4 from Materia Tactics, 4 from Combination Art, and 5 from his EX. So the other thing that you do get out of this is that the Adept Arm, which is the buff that comes along with his LD that converts any healing that you do into Bravery Battery, now also gives you some more Brave reduction up and party-wide Brave and HP damage up as well, percentile-wise. Rude's actually not bad. It's quite nice to see him come back and actually be kind of good again. Like, is he breaking the bank and, like, absolutely everyone has to have him? No, but it's quite nice to see him doing solid damage and making sure that everyone stays safe by batterying everyone after hitting full HP, and he heals for a heck of a lot as well. So, like, any healing that he does converts to 500% Brave gains instead. So you can actually get quite a lot out of him in terms of damage, in terms of auras, in terms of that kind of thing. Do you need to pull for him? No, but it's one of those cases where if you already have Rude, you probably find you quite like pulling him out once in a while again. So now let's take a look at Layle. Now Layle actually does get a fairly hefty rework in terms of how much damage he's able to do once again. He gets multiple HP dumps added to all of his kit. So Field Burst now does 3 HP dumps and now does guarantee a launch, as opposed to just applying the debuff that makes an enemy easier to launch. And then obviously bearing in mind that everything that Layle does launches, which means you're going to be getting a additional 2 HP dumps off of your party members as well. So that's something that's worth bearing in mind. Energy gain has 4 HP dumps, has its delay, and obviously all of Layle's gear and his launches have the added gimmick of all of your party will always be able to participate in a launch, so you're always going to get those additional HP dumps. Geo Impact, you now start with his buff at the start of the quest for like 6 actions, so you don't have to necessarily use Geo Impact straight away. It now does 4 HP dumps. You now get an additional 10% HP damage up during a launch and 20% HP damage up for the party while you're at it. And the HP attack that you get off of it, which is just a free triple HP dumping launching attack, is also there as well. His EX finally gets a good upgrade, and it does 5 HP dumps, which when you add it up with the launch stuff is actually pretty good. And it's got its recast gauge already sped up, which is great considering that it's already a very fast casting EX. And then his BT Plus gives you like easier time launching enemies for the party, so not just him, 50% brave gains, and those delicious HP cap ups, and then refund bravery after HP attacks for him. The problem with Layle is that Selphie exists, if I'm putting it bluntly. Like, all this stuff is actually pretty nice. Layle is not a bad character. I actually really like Layle, and I like what he brings to the table, but the problem with him is, why would you invest all of those wonderful resources into him when you could just take Selphie and trade her out for a friend unit and have it so that launching comes off of every attack for every character? Or if not, even if not her, then Sid Reigns. Like, Sid Reigns also does a lot with just his cool ability, that you're able to do a lot with him. Yeah, there are benefits to Layle. There definitely are. Like the fact that you get a BT attack with him where you get those delicious HP cap ups, all that good stuff. His EX actually does hit really hard, and it means that you're not having to set that kind of stuff up. And he does have that gimmick of no matter where the turn order is, he's always going to have a full party launch, which is nice. But are you going to invest those resources into Layle when you've already got Selphie, maybe Sid Reigns, or if you've not bothered about those two, you probably weren't bothered about launches in the first place? I don't know. Now, of course, the other banner that we have to talk about, which actually has Gabranth's full gear in it, is going to contain Gabranth's new kit, including his brand new BT, of course his FR, which features across both banners, and also has Saz and Paine. Now, Saz just comes along with his force enhancements, and Saz is one of those characters that it's like kind of cute on paper. Realistically, you're not going to bring him along all that often. His main thing nowadays is crit fixing and extending buffs, which isn't as big a deal as it once was, and you're probably not pulling here for Saz, if I'm honest. Paine, on the other hand, does get a rework, which pretty much just increases the amount of HP damage she deals. So she gets triple HP dumps on Break Attack and Black Sky, 5 HP dumps on Chaos Throttle, and then Swords Dance also has 4 HP dumps as long as you're using the plus version of it, because you should be, because as long as you've maxed out her Dress Sphere buff, you'll get that. So nothing super crazy for Paine, but her buffs are still kind of relevant. She still has that thing with her LD where she provides different and variable buffs and debuffs depending on where she's standing in your party, in the top, the middle, or the bottom, or left or right, whichever way you're looking at it. And that's still kind of relevant. Like, do we need HP damage up percentages as much as we did when she first came out? No, probably not. But she does reduce incoming damage, she does reduce enemy defenses, which can be really nice. And there are reasons to bring Paine along. I would say that Paine is a solid character. She's very just solid. There's nothing wrong with her. There's nothing incredible about her in this day and age. But you could definitely bring her out to events if you really wanted to. And then, of course, we have the star of the show when it comes to these banners, which is Gabranth coming in with his brand new FR and brand new BT. Now, he does have a rework here as well. So Circular Judgment gets 4 HP dumps, which is lovely. But Circular Judgment isn't the attack that he uses to break enemies or re-break them. Whereas Guilt, or Execution as it's written here, Guilt can. So if you're using that as a re-break method, then it's a really powerful way to use just Gabranth. But it does have slightly less HP damage than some of his other moves. His LD gets extended so that he starts with his Prince's Keeper buff, which is the buff that allows you to take less HP damage, less bravery damage as well. And that's also been reworked to further HP damage reduction and also have party-wide bravery damage reduction added onto it, as well as his other buffs. And then Innocence Plus is also getting HP dumps across the board and inflicts an attack and defense down and turns them into framed debuffs. So not only are you getting his debuffs that come off of his normal moves, so his Criminal's Mark or his his felons, like his outlaw's mark and all of that, felon's punishment, and you know, the one that levels up depending on whether they have 4 debuffs or not, which they absolutely will do if you're bringing Gabranth, and you're going to be able to make it so your enemies just not dealing a lot of damage to you with the moves that they're doing, which is really valuable for Odin. And then his EX is also going to be increased as well by giving you an additional HP, a set of HP now, so it's doing 4 in total, and you get a free skill use on the following turn, which is obviously designed to help him with his BT phase, so that you're able to use more skills during that. But it's all very much the same thing. So his gear has always been about re-breaking and making enemies deal less damage to you through debuffs and also through protective auras, and he's still doing that. His FR weapon partners him up with Gao in one of the more adorable kind of animations that come with this. This is an interesting one because it re-breaks after every HP attack within the attack itself, so up to 3. And that's actually kind of cool that it re-breaks multiple times, because it is going to be valuable for pushing the enemy back slightly. Against Odin, for example, he has an aura that asks you to break him, so you're able to break him repeatedly. And the thing with this one is that with the force time, when you do an attack command against a debuffed enemy, you get 15%, and when you break an enemy, you get 30%. This is useful-ish, like, with certain compositions. Like, if you're using Tidus, for example, you could use Gabranth's FR, but realistically you'd probably just be using Tidus's, because the actual buff isn't much different if you're using that. When Vayne comes along, you might want to use it with that. If you're using Sephiroth, then he's going to pair up really well with that. But it's a little bit too specific in the compositions it goes in, considering how much it increases the gauge by when you do it. Obviously, any more than that and it would probably be pretty ridiculous, but it can be, it's something to bear in mind that if you're going to use Gabranth, he's probably quite restrictive on who you can bring along with him. Bear in mind that he's a protective character that also doesn't heal, so that's something you might want to bear in mind as well. His BT is, again, another really cool ability that he has from the Dissidia games. And this one is going to give you some HP bravery damage cat, so we always love that. And you're going to get an additional level up on his Outlaw's mark, which turns it into a even bigger version of itself that reduces the enemy attack by 80% and also makes the HP resistance go down by 20. Makes it so they deal 50% less HP damage and take 30% more, and they're also poisoned as well. So it's a really hefty debuff. But the thing with Gabranth, I would say, is that a lot of his stuff, certainly following up from like the likes of Tidus and Camlanaut and stuff, just feels a little bit undercooked. Like, it's not like it's bad, it's not. He's actually very cool, and I will probably throw some stuff at him, but that's primarily because he's Gabranth and I really like him. Do you really need to have Gabranth? No, not really. Rebreakers are a dime a dozen these days, and if you've picked up Tidus and he's able to do it as well and able to do a lot more damage in a shorter space of time and is a lot more malleable in the kind of builds that he can go in, whereas Gabranth is very fixated on the rebreak mechanic. So if you're going to look at like Aranea later, or like I said, Vayne or Sephiroth, then maybe you might want to consider picking up Gabranth, or if you just want someone with that additional protection, then you might like him for that as well. Otherwise, you could quite happily use Odin as a place to just stock up resources. So now let's take a look at Divine Odin and see what he has to offer as well. So once again, massive thank you to DissidiaCompanion.com for this fabulous infographic and all of the information we have on Odin. Now, Odin is tricky, to say the least, which is great for a Shinryu fight in my opinion. It's nice to see that there's more mechanics at play than just build up your gauge and go off. But obviously we also have a Dare to Defy mission that's going to come along with this that we don't really know what that's all about, and whether it's going to be the same Shinryu but obviously with a perfectum attachment to it, so you can only bring one character or a set of characters that you can't bring to any of the others. We don't quite know how that's going to work yet, so that'll be interesting. But going off of the fight itself for the Shinryu fight, it's tricky because of multiple factors. So the first mechanic I want to talk about here with Odin is that he has a hidden buff called Fury, where he will level this Fury buff up every time he breaks one of your characters or after he hits certain thresholds. So 89%, 79%, 69, 49, 39, and 9% he'll increase it by 1, and at 19% he will then increase it by 2. So what is the Fury buff? Well, If he's got a 1 level, he'll have a yellow aura, which reduces your max bravery and max HP, and it reduces them by quite a lot. It won't reduce your current HP, but it'll reduce your max bravery enough that you will deal significantly less damage to him because of it. So you need to break him, re-break him, etc. Again, Gabranth, Tidus, somebody like that, gonna be absolutely fine for this. Or you could just break him when he's ready. If it goes to level 2, then it gets a red aura, which is going to reduce your hit rate for your buffs, which is really bad, and we definitely don't want that. And at 3 stacks, he's just going to instantly kill you. So, don't let him break you, basically. Big facet for this fight. In fact, it's very, like, we've had fights with Odin before, where if he breaks you, bad things happen, and if you break him, good things happen. Very much the same thing here. Don't allow him to break you. So with his force gauge, all you have to really know about that is that he reduces your defenses, which obviously gears him up to break you more easily, and then increases his speed, his attack, even further, and the amount of damage that he deals. So he's trying to break you repeatedly throughout this fight. And I warn you now, Odin is a speedy boy. He's going to take turns fairly frequently unless you really stop him from doing it, which is absolutely possible. And you can totally go in with your Camlanaut and your Tidus, etc. and rinse him, though there is a facet that you have to bear in mind if you're going to do that. So the first thing he's going to do, I'm going to explain here again, is going to be what happens when he hits 100%. He'll attack you with Zantetskin, which is a AoE Brave HP attack that will instantly kill anybody that it breaks. And it also inflicts 8 turns of a debuff called Blade Glint, which is just a simple defense drop. However, while he is in force time, he will use an attack that will instantly kill anyone that has that debuff. So you have methods around this, of course. You could use, say, Reno or Raijin like CA just before he goes into 100% so that he can't debuff you with Blade Glint. You could use Lena like Call so that you've got Winddrake's Arrow or debuff immunity so that you're not getting hit by the debuff in the first place. There are methods around this. Just be very aware of this debuff, because if you're not, it will get you killed. You can also cancel out his force time by using a melee-based FR time as well, which obviously Gabranth plays into, but there are others that do as well. So why can't you just go in with your Camlanaut and Tidus and just win? I mean, you can, but you better hope to God you kill him during a burst phase, because during certain thresholds, so 79%, 49%, and 9%, he will force his way into the turn order by instantly warping into the front of the queue and then taking 4 turns in a row. If you take him over multiple thresholds at once during a burst phase, during all of that, he will do it multiple times. And if you're taking him over those thresholds where he's gaining fury stacks and he instantly goes to 3, he's just going to get his max stacks, get a free turn, and just instantly kill you. So you can do it all in one burst phase. Just be absolutely certain that he's going to be KO'd by the time you've finished that burst sequence. If you don't want to do it all in one shot, though, tanks are always going to be really good. Your Galoofs, your Aurans, your Warrior of Lights, all of that stuff, really strong here. Anything that could prevent you from taking loads of damage is going to be helpful. I mentioned Steiner earlier here because he reduces the enemy attack by a pretty hefty amount while also increasing your defenses. Gabranth, obviously going to be really good here as well. There's lots of options that you have for this fight, but the mechanics themselves are what you need to bear in mind if you want to tackle this tricky fight. So now it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and let everyone else know whether you would pull on any given banner and why that might be the case. Now, of course, a massive thank you goes out to all of my patrons for casting their votes and their comments. It's wonderful to get you guys involved in these videos, and it really does make me feel with joy so that everyone can start a conversation. So it's not all just me talking, you know how it is. So let's go into some numbers here. Nobody says that they're pulling on gems on Layle. 5% of people said that they use 100 or more tickets on Layle. 25% of people said they'll use less than 100 tickets on Layle. 30% of people said no because they didn't want him. And 40% of people said no because they already had everything but the FR. I am in the latter camp. I already have everything but the FR on this banner. And if I'm going to go for that FR, it will be on Gabranth's own banner for the new BT rather than the one I already have. And then with Gabranth's banner, only 7% of people said they were going to use gems here, 48% of people said they're going to use 100 or more tickets, 26% of people said they were going to use less than 100 tickets, and 19% of people said no thank you at all. I am somewhere between the two middle ones. Like, I'm not using gems here. I don't feel like I absolutely have to have Gabranth. Honestly, if it were a different character than Gabranth, I probably would skip this banner entirely. But Gabranth is really darn cool, so I'm happy to throw some tickets at this banner and see what falls out. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a BT, maybe we'll get an FR. So let's go into some of these comments. So Lukayasha says Gabranth has been mostly delegated to cool ability, never really showing up in parties, and even as a cool there are most certainly more useful ones. Kurosame, Fran, Raijin, and Wall, to name a few. The biggest issue with Gabranth's FR and BT is simply that he followed Tidus and Kamlanor. His BET and FR effects are strong in their own way, and pairing him up with re-break characters like Sephiroth and, unironically, Tidus, with their own BT effects, you can certainly get some mileage out of him. However, as both the debuffer, BT and FR unit, Kamlanor still completely overshadows him, and if you paired him with Tidus, his FR effect is still arguably weaker than Tidus's. Despite these issues, I'm still willing to spend 100 plus tickets for him. His rework, BT and FR help keep him up damage-wise, and he still offers the same potent debuffs and HP damage up he always has. Having him in the party often means being able to slot in more offensive or utility-based calls that aren't just HP damage up. Plus, running a full re-break team sounds kind of fun and gimmicky. He also happens to be my favourite FF12 character, so personal bias is also a factor for me. I pretty much feel exactly the same way as this. Like, no, I don't really need Gabranth, but I'm willing to give him a shot because he's Gabranth, and Gabranth is really cool. But yeah, if you're using him in an FR-based team, there aren't many characters that can carry his FR. Like, yeah, you have like Sephiroth and certain other characters that are in the future, but those characters will also have their own FRs, and you might want to consider using those instead. And of the FRs that most players have right now, you're probably just going to opt for those ones instead. And the BT effect is nice, but it's also not like back-breakingly crazy like Kamlanor or Tidus's is, which will last 2 weeks' worth of BTs. So it's kind of what it is. Lewd Pastor says, gonna be going in with gems for Layle. That's not what the poll says. Now, just to call that out for a second there. Huge Crystal Chronicles fan, so he's a must-have for me. Plus, I really like units like Layle who do a pretty respectable amount of damage and also have some nice auras, especially his HP damage and knockback chance up. So he's going to feel really good to have in my team. Also, he has even more party HP cap up with his BT+, along with extra Brave gains. So he's definitely going to be worth pulling for. As for Gabranth, I'm actually going to skip this one. I plan to save my resources for Ursula FR, who has much more consistent and easier to meet FR condition. Plus, I already have Wall and Desh maxed out, so I'm pretty good in the tank department. And I kind of feel like if you have Wall or Gabranth, you don't really need the other unless you want to use his FR. I mean, if we're talking tanks, I'm always going to pick Warrior of Light. And I can't say I hugely agree with the Layle thing, but the reason that I enjoy the Would You Pull section of this is because it's nice to get a wide variety of different people's opinions. I probably wouldn't pull for Layle at this point, certainly not if you have the likes of Selphie or Sid Reigns or anything like that. Ways of launching through other characters than a character that launches tends to be preferable by a lot of player standards. But I do actually really like Layle as well, so I would like to find reasons to use him, and who knows, maybe, just maybe, because of the Dare to Defy thing, there'll be reasons to use him there instead. And then finally, Jemekai says, I love Gabranth. He's one of my favourite characters from 12, but his FR is just a little too limiting to justify going too strongly for unless you have a way to break enemies a lot. And while that's certainly possible, it narrows your party options just too much. Maybe if Gabranth's BET effect made it so you broke enemies every time you attacked, it would make his FR worthwhile. But as it is, I don't know if I can justify maybe some tickets at him. But who knows? Maybe when FR boards come around, he'll get a rework that makes him much better. But if that's the case, I'll just get him then. Yeah. It's sad that you kind of have to pair him up with other characters, and even some of his own moves don't re-break. So the fact that it's the re-break that they focused on with Gabranth for his FR and not like more of the debuffing thing, I'm not entirely sure why that's the case, because his BT effect doesn't really do work with breaks either. So it's kind of a strange situation. It's kind of a mishmash of little bits and pieces, and his primary role as a debuffer and secondary role as a rebreaker seem like they've kind of been flipped over, and I don't really get why. So now, of course, it's time for the big question. Should you be pulling on any of the Divine Odin banners? Now, the first thing to point out is that it's a Divine Summon banner. You can get tons of resources from this. So if you've spent out on the likes of Kamlanor or Tidus or Paine or anything like that, this is a great time to save up in general, because with Charlotta coming and then Luna Freya not long after that, we got some pretty big hitters on the way fairly soon as well. So for a lot of people, I would probably suggest against pulling here. That's not to say the characters here are bad. Layle is actually a very good character. He's significantly improved with his BT plus thanks to the massive Brave gains and the HP damage cap up being pretty hefty. He has 5 HP dumps in his very fast casting EX, plus 2 for any launches that he gets in, which he's always going to get in because of his gimmick of always having the party contribute to it. He's just not Selphie. That's the problem. His problem is Selphie. All of his benefits sound great until you remember that she exists, because she just does so much with so little. Like, all she has to do is come in, use Rapture once, and you're good to go. It's just crazy how much it does. So it's hard to justify spending Ultima resources on Layle when she exists and you don't have to. Like, Layle's actually quite good, which makes it really sad, because I like Layle a lot. In fact, that's true of both of the characters that are present here. I really like both of these characters. I just don't know how far I can recommend using resources on these characters when so many bigger hitters came before and are coming forward as well. Gabranth is actually very good at certain things. He's very, very good at making enemies not do a lot of damage to you. Like, he has hefty attack down but debuffs, really strong defensive auras, so HP and Brave damage down, and his BT effect just takes this and runs with it by making those debuffs even more potent, whilst also adding a pretty heavy HP damage resist down at the same time. His FR ability is interesting. Like, it's okay, it's got some perks to it. I like the attack itself, but it doesn't really justify the amount it increases the gauge by every turn when it's quite so restrictive on who can use it. Like I said, there are benefits to using characters like Sephiroth alongside him. If you've got a green Sephiroth and you want a reason to use him, Gabranth is a fantastic reason to do that, and then you just bring a support healing character and you're good to go. But there aren't many characters that can really capitalize on Gabranth's FR, because his BT effect doesn't make it so your whole party's breaking on every attack. So you're not getting the increase every time, unless you're bringing characters that always re-break. So it's very restrictive on who you could take. Like, yeah, you could take Tidus, but why would you bring Gabranth's FR along when the percentage increase is just as good in Tidus's own FR, and you're definitely going to get that off every turn if you're using Tidus? It just seems a little bit undercooked in comparison to the likes of Tidus and Camelot, and then Charlotta and Lunafreya going forward. It just feels a little bit all over the place. So I can't say I would go all in on it, but I think he'd be a really cool character to pick up for a lot of players, myself included. So that's all for today's video. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Gabranth, what you think of maybe Paine and Rude. I didn't touch on them too heavily, mainly because I think that they are characters that it's nice if you already have them and you get a little bit of an upgrade for them, but I wouldn't go hugely out of my way for them, like specifically to pull for those. Just consider them nice bonuses for the main events, as it were. Or Layle, are you going to green Layle? Is that a character that you think you'll be interested in, or are you just going to continue to use Selphie? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know what other things you'd like to see from me in the future. I've been talking a lot about diversifying my content for a long time now, but I'm really galvanized to try and do that. So let me know any ideas you might have from things you'd like to see from me, and it would be lovely to hear from you all. And with that, I will remind you guys to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notification on any future videos I might be making, and I shall love you and leave you at that. So thank you very much for watching, beautiful, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.